The French Revolution. The French Revolution. Look, I know I say this about literally every video, but it's genuinely hard to exaggerate the importance of this point in European or even world history for that matter. It had everything you look for in a revolution, for those who look for revolutions, from beheadings to riots, military uprisings, the fall of a monarchy, regicide. But where do we begin? Let's start by exploring the root causes of the French Revolution. And to do so, we have to understand the social structure of the country at the time. 19th century France was ruled by a monarchy known as the Ancien Regime. Thank you. Yeah, no more French for me. This regime was led by King Louis XVI. French society was experiencing growing inequality, rising food costs, and significant unemployment. This was made worse by the growing government debt, which it had incurred fighting numerous wars such as the American War of Independence. To address the fiscal deficit, the Estates General met on the 5th of May 1789 for the first time in almost 200 years. However, disputes on how tax should be collected and how much should be paid by the different classes led to its dissolution and the formation of the National Assembly. In the early days of the revolution, amidst rising panic, on the 14th of July, Parisian revolutionists stormed Bastille, a prison for enemies of the monarchy, in search of weapons and summarily executed its governor. At this point, the panic had spread beyond Paris, and in order to stabilize the situation, the National Assembly announced a number of laws, including the abolition of the feudal regime and the elimination of church tithe. They also declared equality among men in France, giving most men the right to vote. On the 26th of August, it introduced a document known as the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. Inspired by Enlightenment ideas of philosophers such as Locke and Rousseau, and the American Declaration of Independence of 1776, originally authored by Lafayette with the assistance of Thomas Jefferson, the document set out to define individual and collective rights during the Revolution. Side note, the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948 and the European Convention on Human Rights drew inspiration from this document. It made declarations such as men are born and remain free and equal in rights, social distinctions may be based only on common utility. Another, the principle of all sovereignty rests essentially on the nation. Nobody and no individual may exercise authority which does not emanate expressly from the nation. Innocuous, right? But you also have Article 15, which states society has the right to hold accountable every public agent of the administration. Again, this sounds reasonable, but what does holding a public agent accountable actually look like? Well, we'll get to that soon. On the 5th of October 1789, thousands of Parisians, including a significant number of women, marched to Versailles where the royal government sat. After a series of deadly confrontations, under the guidance of Lafayette, the royal family, including the king and his wife, Marie Antoinette, agreed to return to Paris to the joy of the mob, which was at this point numbering near 30,000 people. The October days wouldn't be the last occasion of bloodshed during the revolution, and was a crucial point as it marked the end of a relatively liberal movement as the revolution became ever more violent and radical. Whilst the assembly tried to implement legislative reforms, the army held responsibility for maintaining social order. Increasing divisions on how society should be constructed led to the formation of a number of political factions, including the Jacobins, itself further divided into the Girondins and the Mountain, led by revolutionary radical Maximilien Robespierre. After a failed attempt to flee, the royal family was taken back to Paris on the 21st of June 1791, and despite threats by the allied forces of Austria and Prussia, in the event that the revolutionists should attempt to oppose the reinstatement of the monarchy, the king was deposed in August 1792. In September 1792, a number of prisons were attacked by Parisian mobs, resulting in the death of over 1,000 people in just a 5-day period in what came to be known as the September Massacres. This included 200 priests, in addition to counter-revolutionists and other common criminals. In the same month, the National Convention was established, and France officially formed its first republic after the abolition of the monarchy. Precipitated by the Prussian army's invasion of France in August 1792, And as a reaction to paranoia about conspirators within the state, the September Massacre was essentially a precursor to the more violent Reign of Terror. It legitimized the use of force to defend the revolution. And on January 21st, 1793, King Louis XVI was sent to the guillotine for crimes against the state. In September of the same year, the National Convention implemented the terror and passed laws authorizing the imprisonment of anyone it deemed to be a suspect. This led to the arrest of up to 500,000 people in France, including Marie Antoinette, wife of King Louis XVI. Over the 10-month period of the terror, about 30 to 50,000 people had been executed or died in prison. The end of the terror came in July 1794. Robespierre, who had himself, along with individuals including George Danton, led the committee responsible for implementing the terror, was executed after a speech in which he accused his political rivals of being enemies of the state. Amidst all the killings, a number of key changes had taken place in revolutionary France. For one, slavery was abolished in all French territories under the leadership of Robespierre. And even though it was reintroduced and then abolished again, it was the first time slavery was abolished by France in the modern period. Secondly, the church, which had long been synonymous with the state, was stripped of its authority by radicals who wanted to have a more secular state. And that brings me to my third point about key changes during the terror. Part of becoming a secular state meant that Christian influences had to be removed, and that meant the creation of a new French Republican calendar. In August 1795, the National Convention approved a new constitution which placed executive power in the hands of a directory. And remember, this whole time France had been fighting the war with the First Coalition, which would eventually end in 1797. The instability of the directory led to a coup in November 1799, which saw the directory replaced by the French consulate led by a man called Napoleon Bonaparte, signalling the end of the French Revolution and the start of the Napoleonic Wars. From absolute monarchy to absolute dictatorship. To be French. The French Revolution is one of the most important events in history. The deposition of its monarchy and establishment of a republic would go on to influence other revolutions such as the slave revolt in Haiti, and it would also shape how nation-states around the world would organize themselves, from kingdoms to nations. Karl Marx would describe the ideas of the French Revolution as being instrumental to the formation of communist ideas. Its rapid descent into chaos and bloodshed demonstrates the unpredictable nature of revolutions, regardless of the seemingly good intentions of the original revolutionists. Ideas around equality, liberty, freedom, democracy, and secularism continued to shape today's societies.